Thank you. I call the November meeting of the Housing Commission to order. We're going to start with public comment of items not on the agenda. I believe we have one public comment.
Yes, we do, and it's Alex, but don't see online. So maybe.
Okay. Yep, we can come back to that. Sounds good. Next item on the agenda is approval of notes. Any changes to the minutes?
Oh, here's that.
We'll come back to public comment after we finish the minutes.
Except for the minutes.
One sec. I want to keep free. I didn't get a chance to look at this before today. It has been a crazy week.
Since when?
So I should probably also welcome our newest member, Brian Coleman. And also, I don't think everyone is aware that Katie is also now the vice chair of the commission.
Oh.
Okay, so no edits or changes to the minutes then? Okay, so we already had a motion, a second. Any objection to approving the minutes? Objection, okay, they are approved, thank you. Now we're gonna go back to public comment now that Alice has joined us online.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm Alice Hogan. I know several of you, but not all. I asked for a few minutes on public comment this evening just to reintroduce myself and the organization that I work for and let you all know as housing advocates and professionals what we do and how we could support the commission as a group and of course individuals. So some of you are already members and getting different materials from us, but I just wanted to let you know what we have that we could offer you. So again, my name is Alice Hogan. I used to work at Alliance for Housing Solutions, which was a 20-year-old housing advocacy and public education nonprofit here in Arlington. We recently merged with Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance. So it's very similar, like sister organizations. And the Northern Virginia version is kind of like an umbrella with prongs for 5 different jurisdictions. So we came in to be the Arlington prong, and Navajo also works in Loudoun, Fairfax, Alexandria City, and Prince William. So we try to keep tabs on what's going on public policy wise and provide feedback on those things, encourage new ideas, support advocates. We testify for different things that are going on. We have a monthly newsletter that gives a little bit of information on what's going on in all those 5 jurisdictions. And we also offer a once-a-month meeting for a group called Housing Action Arlington, HAA. And that is an open meeting that, you know, advocates, professionals, whoever would like to come. It's virtual. And it's usually the 2nd Wednesday of the month, but this month it's actually the 3rd Wednesday. So if anyone is interested, it is Wednesday the 20th, and it's always at noon, and it's virtual. So if you can join us during your lunch hour, for example, it just kind of helps you keep on top of what's going on in Arlington specifically, because that's the Navajo Arlington HAA meeting. It's all Arlington stuff. So I just wanted to let you know that those things are out there. I'm going to start sending more information to Alex, and he can send it on to you all just to keep you abreast of things. And if there's any questions or anything we can do to help you just educate yourselves or learn something about what's going on in the housing area or talk about ideas you might have. We are here to support this community and advocates. And we also work with Alex and his colleagues on different things. So we just want to let you know that we're here and we're available, and we'd love to support you in any way that we can. So I guess you guys are not online the way I am. So I will make sure that Alex has, can share my email with all of you and maybe watch for materials. And if anyone is interested in getting those materials, a few people in the group are already on and they could give you also my email. So thank you so much. And I'll talk to you later about housing, home ownership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the part 2.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us again this month for part 2 of the homeownership study discussion. I think Akira is going to share some slides really quickly, but I did just want to quickly introduce myself because I wasn't able to join the meeting in October, and I know that Akira and Richard gave a lot of great information, but my name is Caitlin. I am a planner in the housing division. I work with Alex and the other staff who are on the call tonight. And I've been the coordinator for the homeownership study since it began a couple years ago. So I'm really excited to be here tonight and to talk with you about the study and to quickly I also just wanted to quickly recap what we did talk about last month, just to give everyone a refresher, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail about recommendations. So again, this is the agenda. I'll quickly recap what we talked about last month. We'll go into recommendations, and then we will continue any discussion that we don't get to via the when we were talking about recommendations. So we can go to the next slide. So what we talked about last month, we talked about the background and sort of the process that we went through to get to this point. We talked about the analysis of homeownership barriers and program assessment. We talked about the community engagement process that we went through last year to engage the community on homeownership. And then we also talked about the recommendations for 4 existing programs. So the MyPAP program, Affordable Dwelling Unit program, condo support, and education and technical assistance. So quick recap about what was discussed. We talked about the barriers analysis. We talked about homeownership market trends. Talked about the availability of ownership housing in the county and the lack thereof. We talked about disparities in home ownership rates, housing cost burden, and various opportunities among renter households. We also talked about the program assessment that we did, who we're serving, and what the gaps are. And I'm going through this really quickly because I want to make sure we spend enough time on the actual recommendations. We also talked about the extensive community engagement work that took place with residents to determine what the role of local government should be in providing homeownership support, and to also develop a vision and goals for our homeownership programs. And then we began discussing the actual recommendations. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to Akira, who's going to recap what those recommendations were, just to sort of refresh everyone's memory. And then we'll go into some of the ones that we weren't able to get to last month. So Akira, do you want to take it over really quickly?
Yep. Good evening, everyone. So I can't believe it's already been a month. So last month we covered recommendations for the majority of our existing homeownership programs. For MyPAP, we discussed the recommendation of revising the program parameters to create a multi-tiered approach that would serve households currently not eligible for MyPAP. And those are households earning between 81 and 100% of the area median income. Our recommendation for the affordable dwelling units was that we examine the resale restrictions as well as the physical condition of the existing units. Also, in conjunction with one of our other new program recommendations, we recommend a set aside of home improvement fund assistance for these households. And then we provided a rundown of our recommendation for condominium support, which the recommendation involves expanding the education offerings for current condo owners, as well as creating a set aside assistance through, again, HIP for our home improvement loan funds for condo owners. And then lastly, last month, we talked about education and technical assistance and how important that was, and the possible expansion of homeownership education and targeting outreach for potential home buyers, and how critical we thought that would be for these efforts in homeownership education. So I am going to talk about our next recommendation. I'm sorry, let me just go back really quickly. So what I'm going to do now is cover our last recommendation for existing programs, and then we'll go into the recommendation for new programs. So the recommendation for our existing programs, the last one is the real estate tax relief program. The recommendation for real estate tax relief generally mirrors the recommendation from the Affordable Housing Master Plan 2021 implementation framework, which is to reevaluate the program with an equity lens periodically. Homeownership study participants often cited the real estate tax relief program as an area where the county should consider revisiting. So these recommendations are aimed at ensuring that targeted populations have equitable access to this benefit. So assessing staff capacity, systems, infrastructure, cross-jurisdictional comparisons, and resources needed would be really critical to a review of this program. Additionally, staff recommends that there's a review or assessment of the implications of mortgage requirements on existing homeowners. So we do acknowledge that the bulk of this work would need to be coordinated with the Department of Human Services staff. But this review could really assist in recommending program changes that might improve the program's effectiveness and therefore reach households that are most in need of relief. And so this recommendation aligns with our goals that Caitlin previously mentioned for the homeownership study, goals 1 and 2, that we really make an effort to provide an equity-focused lens on these supports, as well as our goal to help existing homeowners to maintain housing in the community. So with that, I think I can answer questions, or we can answer questions with regard to anything that's been mentioned thus far. If there are no questions, I will just move forward. Okay. So the sixth recommendation for the homeownership study is that we establish a home buyer cohort pilot program. So such a program would provide education and ongoing support to an annual pool of prospective home buyers and potential MyPAP applicants. These would be targeted households that are expected to need one-on-one personalized support to navigate the home buying process from start to finish. In particular, the cohort would help participants tackle common financial barriers like high debt to income ratios, credit issues. The program would leverage education and financial assistance that's offered through other programs and other activities. So while this program does aim to prepare home buyers for homeownership within the county, we do recognize that through our home buyer education outcomes, that such supports may not directly lead to home purchases in the short term, nor does such supports provide a guarantee that participants will purchase in the county. However, we do believe that targeting households at this level would significantly enhance the financial literacy and preparedness of households who have been disproportionately impacted, and ultimately position them to be able to purchase a home in the county or elsewhere. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Caitlin to continue.
We have a question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, yes.
Who's going to be providing the education and support to the buyers? County staff, or you going to use professional real estate agents?
So currently the county works through our CDBG program with the Latino Economic Development Center, and they provide home ownership counseling or home and financial counseling, as well as home ownership purchase counseling. We also direct potential buyers to Virginia Housing for the home buyer education course. But I think in terms of this particular recommendation, we do anticipate that the county would work with a nonprofit entity to provide this level of one-on-one education to support buyers that would potentially become applicants of the county's down payment assistance programs.
Yeah, and who's going to compensate them? Are they HUD-approved counseling agencies?
Yes, yes. So the HUD-approved counseling agency is foundational to this entire approach. So yes, we would hope that we would be able to identify funding opportunities to support these nonprofit entities, but certainly they would have to be HUD-approved counseling entities in order to be able to provide this level of assistance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Doris. I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering, I think this is an excellent recommendation. And remembering my ignorance in getting into a mortgage, but what I wanted to ask is, will these programs incorporate assistance for people, particularly people with sensory disabilities who are either deaf or hard of hearing or blind or vision impaired, or other disabilities, physical disabilities that might be a problem with handling paperwork and such, to provide accommodation? Or will they, if they're getting money from the county and their nonprofits to do home buyer education, will there be a set up requirement for how accommodations will be made, and will there be like assistance when you're dealing with the attorneys and your mortgage and all of that, and getting alternative formats, which is actually in the open market, despite Fair Housing Act requirements and requirements of ADA is ignored all of the time. So I'm just curious about whether you've thought of, or whether you could be thinking about adding something about doing that.
Thank you for that
so
question.
We're not left out there ignorant of what,
Do you want me to answer the question?
just getting along on our own. Yeah.
Oh, so I think that's Karen. Is that
Yes.
you, Karen?
So,
Certainly, go ahead.
I'm a HUD certified housing counselor working for the Latino Economic Development Center, and we do provide services for people who have disabilities and the whole spectrum of different types of accommodations. We have language lines, we have sign language interpreters, we have had sensory sensitive interpreters. We have done all that in the past, and we continue to do so. So yes, that service is provided to people with disabilities.
But as a blind person, then I'm going to ask very directly, do you provide dedicated readers to read all the documents that are necessary, or at least put pressure on those who are supposed to do that?
So Doris, for every single person that I've worked with, they've been able to use their computers to be able to access that information. It's all accessible if you have the software.
And if it isn't, which is possible, very
So
possible.
everybody that's ever asked for accommodations has received accommodations.
Yeah, okay. So I think that is something that protocol is something you should look into. Okay, thank you.
That's very helpful and useful insight, that we look at ensuring that we have access to alternative formats in providing homeownership education, to this cohort as well as other, potential interested, purchasers. So I really appreciate that, and I think that's something that we will certainly make sure that we keep at the forefront of our minds as we're moving forward. Are there any other questions about what we've covered thus far? Okay,
All
Caitlin.
right. Thanks, Akiria. All right, so I'm going to go into the next recommendation. So this recommendation is to revamp our home improvement loan program. It is going to, we're hoping that it will loosely mirror a program that the county supported for many years up until about 2017. But this time around, we're recommending a slightly different approach. We're, in addition, similar to the MyPAP program, we're recommending a tiered approach to the program that would provide different levels of assistance based on need. And with that, developing an affirmative marketing strategy to target assistance to certain populations, potentially including older adults, disabled households, extremely low income households, potentially even targeting neighborhoods with high proportion of aging housing. Um, and so we're thinking that the scope of this program would go beyond what's currently offered through some of our nonprofit partners, addressing more substantial system repairs and home maintenance needs. This program would also enable the county to support condo owners impacted by special assessments and ADU owners needing to make repairs to their units, which we discussed at last month's meeting through a set aside of funding through the program. And this level of support is not currently offered by the county. So just quickly note, this is the sort of tiered structure that we're proposing. And while there's additional discussion and sort of program design work is going to be needed to refine how the program would work. But our initial recommendation is to have one tier of the program focused on, like I said, ADU or low-income condo owners to assist with repairs or special assessments. And so again, this tier would enable the county to offer short-term, potentially forgivable assistance to ADU and condo owners who are facing immediate needs. And so then the second tier of funding would be focused on households earning below 80% of AMI, needing to make major repairs or accessibility upgrades to their units. And this would sort of closely mirror the HIP program the county previously operated until about 2017. And then the third tier would be focused on households earning below 60% of AMI, and then would enable the county to direct assistance to priority communities. And we're thinking that loan terms could potentially be forgivable under certain circumstances. So this is what we're thinking as far as the home improvement loan program. And with that, I'm going to quickly pause to see if there are any questions from those in the room or on the call.
Nope. Oh, wait. We do have one. Is that Alice?
Looks like it's Alice. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Is now an okay time for questions?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. I had a question about this section. I see it says major repairs in two of the boxes, but the first one, is there, it says with repairs. Is there a difference of the level of repair? Is that why it's 20K versus 45, or just curious about the low income section?
Yeah, no, I don't think that I think the max loan amount is what's different between these two tiers. I don't necessarily know that the level of repair is different. Although of course that the amount of funding would potentially differ based on the level of repair. But the first tier is really focused on those, the ADU and condo owner, and that's sort of where we're hoping to sort of direct that assistance from. And so that's really the major difference there.
Okay, thank you. And then I did have one back on the RETR. Maybe whenever there's a scope, we would know this, but I didn't see anything on there about the conversation we've had over the years about deferral versus exemption and looking at that formula for different groups of households where some really need the exemption, but others could manage on just a deferral. And I'm wondering if that is also going to be in the kind of scope when the time comes.
Akiria, do you want to take that one or you want me to?
Yeah, I can start with that. I think ultimately the Department of Human Services is really going to assess how to proceed with this recommendation, but they are certainly going to take that into consideration as well as the other aspects, including the staff capacity and systems infrastructure. But I think in terms of programmatically, there are several things that they will be looking at to ensure that the households that need the assistance the most are able to access it, and that those that may not need the benefit, there may be some changes associated with that. But I think it really would come down to the scope that the Department of Human Services puts in place.
Thank you, Akiria.
Thank you,
let me
Alice.
let me jump in for a second. I'm Richard Tucker. I'm also with the Housing Division. Alice, I also anticipate that at whatever time the board decides that it's time to delve into this, I think there'll be some conversation about what, and to answer your question, what the scope should be.
Sure.
So I would even take that out of the hands of DHS, but I think the board would give direction in terms of what the scope or what items are ideas need to be explored within an upcoming review.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
For the real estate tax relief program, is the reason why it's in DHS and not under CPHD because it's sort of a need-based? I mean, some of these other programs are need-based as well, but has any thought been given to potentially grouping all the homeownership programs together, or?
The main question with the real estate tax relief and where it's housed, it's never been a CPHD function. But the tax assessor, there has been an argument made in the past, and I think previously at sometime in the past, it was under the tax office and not DHS, but it made more sense because DHS deals more directly with people's needs than the tax assessor, that it was moved to DHS, but they obviously coordinate that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I guess I will move on to our final new program recommendation. And so this recommendation is really aimed to address homeownership housing supply. And so we're proposing to pilot a homeownership production fund. And so I think I know that Akiria and Richard talked a lot about this last month, but our homeownership housing supply is really challenged by a market that primarily produces mid and high-rise rental apartments. There are very few affordable homeownership housing options that exist outside of condo units. So we're proposing to create this fund, create a competitive process to consider a wide variety of different development activities that can be supported through this funding opportunity. So we're looking at developing a notice of funding opportunity that would sort of look to solicit program ideas or project ideas from developers. Eligible activities that we're looking at that could be supported include pre-development, acquisition, construction, or even buyer side subsidy. We anticipate that this could be an opportunity for a community land trust to participate. They could be an eligible applicant for the funding. And we think that this source of funding would be ideal for smaller scale or newer developers that lack access to capital. So again, we're looking to conduct this first round of funding through this program as a pilot. This concept is currently untested, so we're really hoping to be as flexible as possible. And we're thinking that this recommendation would directly support goal 3, if you'll remember from that chart that we showed last month, which is to increase the production of homeownership housing supply. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions or comments.
Yeah, supply is our number one problem in this county. And we've gone through missing middle, and I hate using the term, or expanded housing option. And people have a wrong connotation of that. So I think out of this whole study, this is probably the most important thing that we should be dealing with. And I'm wondering if you're looking at modular housing, cross-mod housing, and other alternatives. And in doing that, is there any allowance for zoning exceptions or whatever? If you really wanted to do something, that would probably facilitate the success of a production pilot program.
Sure. So I heard a couple different questions. So on the sort of modular housing, I think as far as housing types, we're sort of open to ideas and opportunities that come through this. Again, it's untested, so we're sort of not exactly sure, what's going to come in, and so we're hoping to be as flexible as possible. But I'm going to ask Richard to chime in on the zoning question that you had, because I think that he would be better suited to answer that.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure that there will be, additional zoning studies to create flexibility. I think I think the challenge is going to be for developers to work within the zoning as it exists. Um, and I think we had a sort of a question about this particular topic at the homeownership subcommittee meeting prior to this. And I think my response at that time was uh, a way to do, multiple units on a lot is to get a lot that is zoned for multifamily. So, so it's going to take some creativity or some legwork to identify sites that are appropriate for multiple units. Back to the question about modular housing, I did have a conversation with the zoning official. I mean, excuse me, the building official, Shariar Amiri. And so there's not necessarily any, you know, prohibition or hurdle to be overcome. I think there are technical matters that need to be resolved, and if the developer is skilled enough, they can do modular housing in Arlington. It has been done in the region, but not in Arlington so far as I know.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at. I mean, there's a lot of very successful modular products. HUD is doing a lot of work with manufactured cross-mod modular housing. I think I mentioned once before, I went to a groundbreaking that Fannie and Freddie approved. The FHA commissioner was there, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the regulator of Fannie and Freddie. So it's being done. There's no technical issues. The bigger issues are NIMBYism at the local level. So what I'm looking at is if this report could say some warm and fuzzy things to facilitate that and to invite developers, and they're out there. Believe me, the developers are out there. I can give you names of people. I'm meeting with one tomorrow. They're out there. They just did one in Prince George's County. They're doing stuff in Loudoun County. So it's out there. So what I'm looking at is Arlington to basically socialize the issue in this report, so people know they're welcome to do it and stuff like that. It's a very quick and affordable way to put production online.
Sure, and I think we can do you one better. If and when we have funding available, and we have when we issue a notice of funding availability, or we call it a NOFO, that we can add language there as well. So when we're identifying the types of projects or the types of opportunities where we would like to fund, we can certainly punch that up and talk, about modular housing as an option as well.
Right. What I'm looking at, if the county is investing in this great study, that we should be putting content in there, socializing the concept and at least being a cheerleader for it. So thank you very much.
Sure.
As far as the funding for this goes, my understanding is that this doesn't move forward if we don't get the grant from HUD. Is that correct?
Well, we are hopeful that we get funding from HUD. We'll see how things happen, how things go in the new year. But obviously, all of these recommendations can be considered as part of the county's regular budget process.
Okay, so it's basically a county board decision then.
Sure.
Okay. And I know during the subcommittee meeting, I had asked about the first right of refusal or the right of first refusal being attached to other programs within this, not just the homeownership production fund pilot. And is that something that staff looked into?
We are, well, we're talking about it. We're discussing.
Okay, I know there's interest on the county board to figure out how we can do more of that in Arlington. And it just seems like we should explore opportunities to attach that where we can. Karen, is there something you want
No,
to
I'm just
say?
saying that will take some time. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. Other questions?
Alice has had her hand up, I think.
I don't know if that's a legacy hand up or if that's. Alice, is that new or is that from before?
Oh, sorry, that's from before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion?
All right. So Carrie, I
Okay.
think you were going to take this
Yeah.
slide, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, just so to wrap this up, just wanting to just provide just an overall view of where these programs land in our continuum of homeownership supports, if you will. So these recommendations will allow us to serve more home buyers and homeowners, and we may be able to scale and do more incrementally over time, depending on the availability of resources. But as you can see, what we are looking at, the proposed new programs highlighted in yellow, do provide assistance to households going in the range of 80% of the area median income, which is our target audience. But then also there is an extension of the MyPAT program assisting households up to 100% of the area median income. So we do think that these programs will help us to meet some of those barriers and needs that we've identified in the study. We'll need to be flexible, of course, and continue to modify how we address these needs and also be cognizant of market challenges and conditions. But we do, over time, think that these recommendations will allow us to meet a lot of the needs that we discovered throughout the homeownership study. I did want to mention really quickly, there are other ongoing considerations, and this is not an exhaustive list at all, but certainly we do know that supports to Arlington County government as well as Arlington Public Schools employees is not distinctly addressed in the recommendations, although those households may or may not be eligible for the programs that we are recommending. But feedback did suggest that there is a gap, particularly for Arlington Public Schools employees. And so this is certainly an ongoing consideration where we would be continuing to look at opportunities there. Further, are there any opportunities to address homeownership needs on a regional level? Always looking at those opportunities that could possibly help us to bridge some of the gaps on a holistic level throughout the region, if possible. Although this study was primarily focused on Arlington County. But thirdly, looking at opportunities to support transfer of property to heirs. It is not addressed directly in the recommendations, but we know that there is a considerable need. We don't know the degree of the need, but we do anticipate that there is a considerable need to address this level of technical assistance. And so that is something that we have on our radar, as well as the implications of the National Association of Realtor court case and settlement, where essentially buyers have to pay their own realtors commissions as opposed to the prior standard where sellers paid those commissions. We are closely looking at that and just trying to determine if there are opportunities for us to assist buyers with those commissions if necessary. But we have not determined any definite methodology in any of these topics, but we do know that they are important.
Do you have information about how many more people, if these programs are implemented, will be able to purchase a home for the first time versus the programs we have today?
So we do capture, and I'd be happy to send that out to you. We do capture how many households we anticipate being able to serve in a fiscal year if we are provided the resource allocation that we are hoping for. So, for example, if we want to serve 10 households, we do have an amount that would be ideal to serve those 10 households. And so I'd be happy to direct you to that number. I don't have like a total number at this point, but I'd be happy to provide that to you offline.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be helpful.
You're
And
welcome.
specifically like separating out just providing services that may not necessarily lead to a home purchase versus services that do. So
Right.
like the counseling may or may not lead to a home purchase that year or the next year, who knows? Whereas like the supply could directly lead to one. It would just be helpful to have kind of a better understanding of if the resources are dedicated to these programs, we'll be able to serve this many more households or get them into, owning a home in Arlington.
Yeah, and
Understood.
that
Mhm.
information is also in the staff response document that we pulled together. And I think each recommendation has a section that says like potential impact. That's based on the illustrative examples that were provided in the consultants' reports. So I think you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt because of course it really depends on level of funding for a lot of this. And I think that's so if you wanted to take a look at the staff response document, that those numbers are in there.
Yeah, I think from an advocacy standpoint, if those numbers could be delineated with each of the proposals, that would be, like if you're a county board member and you're doing the budget, what are you going to get the bang for the buck? So if that was presented in the report, not only for the county board, but for actually the public when this thing goes out, I think that would be very important. Put it right where the recommendations.
Yes.
And also as far as this, go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, I think. Sorry, just real quick. I think that is in the report. I think it has the estimated impact of the number of households. I think that's in there already.
It is, but we'd be happy to point you guys to it in a separate communication.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
As far as the status of each of these items, I know there's contingencies on, funding from HUD, also probably contingencies on funding from the county board in the next budget cycle. It would be helpful to know, are certain, maybe the existing ones that are being expanded, is that just happening regardless, or is everything waiting on board approval? Or some of these just staff can move forward with them without board approval?
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is, the items that don't have a fiscal impact, are we able to move forward on them? And yeah, I mean, I think that's the plan. I think there are some, as far as so for example, the MyPAP program, we're recommending changing some of the program parameters. That's some potentially low hanging fruit there that we can really start working on immediately. I think, there are certain recommendations, like you said, like expanding the MyPAP program beyond, 80 to 100% to support 80 to 100% AMI households. We don't have a funding source for that currently, so that will, take some time to figure out what that's going to be. But yes, I think, some of the other items that don't necessarily have, a resource need, our intention is to continue pursuing and working towards those recommendations.
Thank you. Can you all keep us updated as staff either makes those decisions or figures out, if and where funding is coming from, so we have a sense of, the coming months, like which of these programs are moving forward as recommended, or
Yep.
but just like as those conversations happen, as boards approve things, it'd be helpful to get an update.
Sure. Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Happy to.
And
I have a
Caitlin, do some of those recommendations that that are adjustments to the program that may or may not have budget implications because they don't require additional budget, but may have actual budget implications, such as increasing the minimum, the maximum amount.
So those, you can't, money for existing programs,
Right.
can't expand over 80% of AMI.
Right, that I understand, but I thought that one of the recommendations was to increase the maximum amount.
Purchase price.
Purchase price, which if the math, to me, that means you could potentially be serving fewer people, because won't the money go less far, or no?
Well, right. So the idea is that the maximum MyPAP amount would not increase. The maximum purchase price
Okay, I got it.
allotment or limit would increase. And also just wanted to mention that criteria would still have to go before the board, because the MyPAP guidelines have to be board approved. So regardless of whether or not we are folding in the additional assistance tiers of 81 to 100% of AMI, or additional funding sources, the purchase price limit change would still have to go to the board for approval.
Go ahead,
I was
Doris.
just, hello?
Yes, Doris?
Yes, I was just wondering whether you have any data on the impact of rising condo fees and how that presents a barrier either to purchasing or to retaining ownership of condos, and whether there's any need for any kind of help in that area, and so that's what I'm wondering. We have heard from the senior population and others, that way that there's a problem there in terms of continuing.
Yes. So to answer your question, absolutely. Condo fees are a barrier to purchasing as well as a barrier to maintaining. And so we see that every day because, of course, your condo fees are coupled in with your mortgage to go toward your debt to income ratio, right? So if your debt to income ratio is more than what's comfortable for a bank, then you're not going to be able to get a loan. And of course, if you're unable um, to support the rising cost of condo fees, it's going to be more difficult for you to be able to maintain your unit. So I think
So
it's
is there a way to
certainly
fit that into what you're reporting, or how are
right.
you working on solutions?
Yeah, so in our barriers analysis that we published last year, we do really outline one of that the fact that condo fees are a barrier to home ownership, but then also in terms of our possible opportunities for assisting households in looking at the recommendation for the home improvement program, there is discussion of whether or not we might be able to assist households that are or in our condo support. I'm sorry, the condo support recommendation. There is discussion about whether or not we would be able to assist households that are moderate or low income that are experiencing difficulty with special assessments to maintain their unit. There is not considerable conversation about regular month to month condo fee support, but certainly on the special assessment side, and the special assessments, for those that may not be aware, is essentially when a condo needs to make considerable capital improvements, and they need to ask each one of the owners to pay a fee, and sometimes a large fee on top of their monthly condo fees. We do know that there is a opportunity for assisting low and moderate income homeowners with this type of support. It's really a one-time assistance kind of thing, but certainly we are looking at it, but we're not necessarily looking at this in a way where we would be providing households with a monthly stipend or a monthly assistance to pay their condo fees.
And the other thing I was wondering about is rollover. And what I mean by that is that the programs are mostly helping first-time home buyers. And I'm just wondering if there's any data that supports, you
Hey,
know.
Doris, is it possible for you to get closer to your microphone?
Oh,
It's
I'm sorry. I apologize. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay. So what I was asking, I'm sorry, I was bumbling. What I was asking was whether there was any data on rollover, how once somebody's in the program as a first-time home buyer, how quickly people are able to go on to, a second purchase and leave a spot or spots at least financially available to new people who want to get into the program.
Okay, so the MyPat program is a loan, so that that loan can be used for affordable dwelling units as well as for market rate units, but it's traditionally being used for market rate units. That loan has to be repaid, and whenever it's repaid, it can be rolled over to assist additional households. That's the model. In terms of affordable dwelling units, we have very little turnover in the affordable dwelling unit arena, and that's due to several reasons. Households that purchase those units tend to stay put. especially the households that have purchased larger affordable dwelling units. Even if they were to sell their unit and to get another unit in the county that is as large, it may be difficult. So typically households tend to stay put in affordable dwelling units, which is, really one of the reasons why we wanted to have the home ownership production fund to try to spur some of the development, because we know that owners are going to do what is best for their households, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they will leave the program in order to make space for additional households. So we are trying to buttress that by creating more opportunity for affordable homeownership in the county.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if that was the end of the presentation, or you guys still have more?
No, that was basically the end. We just wanted to remind everyone what our community engagement schedule is. We are obviously meeting with you all tonight. We're meeting with the Disability Advisory Commission on November 18th. We are still trying to schedule a couple other committee and commission meetings this month, and hoping to go to the board with a county manager report sometime in December or January. If you have additional thoughts or feedback, feel free to share them with me or Akira or any other member of the homeownership study team. We're hoping to wrap up comments by the first week of December. So any additional comments should be hopefully kindly be shared by then. And yeah, thanks for having us. We really great conversation. If there are any other questions, we'll take them now. If not, we will circle back when we have more details. And of course, kind of like you asked, keep you updated about funding as well as how program design is moving forward.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and all your
Thank
efforts.
you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a series of annual reports and briefings.
There actually was power.
Oh, Alice, did you have a comment other than your questions on that item?
I did want to ask them what they thought would be the impact of the EHO lawsuit and the injunction on the permits, because it seems like a lot of what they're hoping for are small, attainable, financially more attainable units, which was, the idea behind Missing Middle. So I wondered, like, from the staff's perspective, and maybe Caitlin answered it by what are the low-hanging fruit, but of the other items, how much did this injunction impact the potential of these changes and new programs that you're suggesting?
Yeah, Alice, I don't know if we can, quantify impact. We had previously anticipated EHO as a potential mechanism to build smaller units. So we're going to have to rely, if we get to the point where we do have funding available and we're asking for developers to shoot us their ideas as to how they can develop affordable housing, affordable homeownership opportunities. We'll just have to wait and see how that, what we end up receiving. And so obviously that's not going to be an option for us in the short term. And so therefore we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question, Caitlin, it said on your email today to the committee that you'll be receiving feedback until December 6th. I was wondering if there's a feedback form, or is that just emailing you directly? How would we share that opportunity with the community?
Yeah, so there, you can email me directly. We're also posting a feedback form on the website, and I can also send that around. But yeah, so either is fine.
Okay, that's great. I'll look for the form. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, next agenda item, as I said, annual reports for the Affordable Housing Master Plan fair housing plan and the CAF strategies. That
I will take that. Russell Denaus Schroeder, Principal Housing Planner, the Housing Division at CPHD. I'm joined with my colleague Joel Franklin and Jennifer Daniels online. They'll be talking later. So I'm gonna share my screen. Always delay, lag here. Too many windows. So there's multiple elements to tonight's presentation. First of all, talking about the Affordable Housing Master Plan annual report, which doesn't exist as an annual report anymore. Last year, we moved to a dashboard format, and I'll be introducing that to you, and probably not going over every single detail, but inviting you to explore it at your own. I think as housing commissioners, this really serves as a valuable resource and tool for you as you have questions about affordable housing in Arlington. So once you're at arlingtonva.us, the homepage for Arlington, all you have to do is put in housing dashboard. Or if you just put in dashboard, a number of dashboard options will come up, including the affordable housing dashboard. So this gets you to a landing page for the dashboard, not the dashboard itself. And the landing page is important. And if you're going to bookmark something, bookmark the landing page and not the dashboard itself. You'll find, obviously, the link to the dashboard, but on the right-hand side, links to really valuable resources, the main plans that guide policy around housing in Arlington, including the Affordable Housing Master Plan, the implementation framework, the CAF strategies report, the Fair Housing Plan, the consolidated plan, which is over the HUD programs, the strategic plan to end homelessness, the general land use plan. These a one-stop for all your every plan you ever wanted to see. Also links to reports there and other dashboards that the county has, including the quarterly rent report, which I always like to get a plug in for. But the dashboard itself, a second to load, and hopefully you can all see this well enough. A couple changes since last year, not too much. We over in the bottom right-hand corner is kind of like what's new. One of those things is a link to our implementation highlights, and Joel will cover that later, which really gets to kind of the tasks in our various implementation frameworks, including the Fair Housing Plan and how we're progressing towards this. Also highlights the Barcroft Master Financing and Development Agreement, a big, huge thing for last year. You can navigate this from the front page pretty much by clicking on any one of these banners, areas that you're interested in, starting with the overall housing supply and then moving to committed affordable housing, the rental housing market, our homelessness efforts, and renter assistance. So I'm going to walk through a couple things. Besides any of these things on the dashboard that you can click on, you can also click it on the page number and you can navigate by page, or if you click on that, it actually comes up with kind of a table of contents, and that might help you if you're looking for something specific. You want to go to the map of committed affordable housing. Click on that and boom, you're there. There's back buttons on each page to help you return. So I'm just going to cover some quick highlights. So the overall housing supply, which is kind of a starting place. How much housing do we have in Arlington? What does it look like? What kind of housing? And so this breaks that all down and breaks it down by different types. So elevator apartments are the largest type of housing, 47,000 units, about 38% of our housing. But what you can see here at the bottom is kind of the annual increase in housing over time. And we added 3,560 units which is a lot. Actually, it was quite the year for production between 23 and 24. the majority of those, 98% of those were apartments. So we just had our home ownership thing, and supply was mentioned as a significant issue, and this really speaks to that. But moving on, the bulk of the dashboard really is focused on our committed affordable housing and kind of organized by questions here, and we won't go through all of them. We do highlight, what are the projects in 2024 that are delivering committed affordable housing. Obviously, Crystal House 3 finally getting approval, and we back up here. We count our units when the county board approves financing for them. So although there's a plan to build a lot of housing at Crystal House, and even the Crystal House 3, there's two components to that. There's it's a hybrid tax credit thing. So the 9% credits got approved in 2024. The 4% are getting approved in 2025. So we're only counting 88 of those units in this year. There's a lot more units there. But you've seen all these projects. You sit on the commission. These all come to you. The Bingham Center, 15 CAFs, ARVA, which the result of a general land use plan amendment. 7 units. Yep.
Question. You said we count them when the board approves the financing. So when we say we have 11,000 whatever CAFs in the county, are we talking about approved CAFs and not actual supply that people can live in or are living in today?
That is correct. Our overall number. So if we go back to the overview here, we have our top line number, 11,355. So that includes everything that the county board has approved, but not all those have been built.
Do we also track how many?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Just keep them coming.
That one of the other
The
questions.
dashboard will answer almost any question you have. And this is why I think it's a really great tool for you all. I know that many people, this becomes their go-to thing. So so if you want to go to the map, the CAF map, this will answer that question. So the map shows where everything is. That's a point of a map, but it also shows, by the status. Are they simply approved? And when you click on one of these things on the legend at the top of the map, it filters the results of the table over at the right-hand side. So you can say, oh, there's 404 that have been approved, but aren't yet built. And then additionally, you can go to, well, what's under construction? There's 287 that have been approved, but are under construction. So we don't have those yet as physical, tangible things that people can move into, but they're on their way. So that's a good thing. Another interesting thing, while I'm on this one, because I think that the maps are incredibly useful. And there's 2 maps. One is that shows kind of by their status, approved, operating, or under construction. And then the second map that shows the CAFs by the areas that are defined in the Affordable Housing Master Plan. So you get geographies, and so you can do that. And you can combine them together if you wanted to look at just all of Columbia Pike, and not just if you push down the shift key. There's a direction on that you can't see down here below the legend that tells you that you can do this. You can select multiples, and then you get the table at the right that gives you, there's 4,018 committed affordable units on the Columbia Pike corridor. Now, the table it's a very narrow space there. There's a lot more information on that table. So you can expand that table. There's a little focus mode here when you hover over the table at the upper right hand. And that will open that table in a new window. And it gives you a lot more information. It tells you not only the name, the number of CAF units, but how those units were produced. Was it through county financing, land use tools, or some other mechanism? Are they operating? Are they simply approved? How many units by bedroom size, efficiency, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom? How many units by, I'm gonna scroll over, by affordability? How many 30% A-line? How many 40%? How many 50%? And any one of these you can click on to to filter so that it goes from, greatest to lowest. So if you want to know where are the 50% AMI units, you can do that. And so thank you to, Alice was giving a plug for her group, and I back in July presented on the dashboard, and this was one of the feedback things that I heard and took away from that was they wanted more information on the affordability level included with these tables. So there you go. So, and part of my purpose in coming to you tonight is also, what information would be more helpful you to make this more useful to you. I know there's a lot more to kind of explore, and I invite you to explore it at your own. I think you'll get more out of it by taking some time by yourself, sitting quiet, and saying, I always wondered this. And chances are you'll find what you're looking for here somewhere. Again, our overall for the affordable housing master plan, we have a goal of having 17.7% of our housing as affordable to households under 60% of AMI. We're currently at 12.1%, but this is kind of our main metric. When we approved the plan in 2015, we were at 8.6%. And so we've made advances. We're at 12.1% right now. And this also shows this is derived both from committed affordable, not all committed affordable, because we have some at 80%, but those that are under 60, and also the market rate affordable housing that's available in the county under 60% of AMI. Anyways, I believe, let's see, there's a host of information here, but I know Joel has a whole lot to share with you as well. Information on how our homeless programs are serving the needs of people in the community, and also our housing grants, housing choice vouchers, and permanent supportive housing. Happy to answer questions perhaps after Joel, Jennifer finish their portion. But thank you for your attention. And remember, just plug in Affordable Housing Dashboard or Housing Dashboard on the main Arlington webpage, and this will land you there. And hopefully answer some of your questions. And if you see a way that this could be better, please reach out to me. Happy to incorporate new ideas. Thank you.
I was being a little bit of a guinea pig.
Oh,
It's hard to read it on here.
it is very hard.
I'm very impressed with it, having looked at some of the other county stuff, and if you're zeroing in on affordable housing, good. Once again, I'm a big proponent of transparency, and I wish this is publicized more so the taxpayers would know what's going on here, and don't say give out misinformation, which a lot of them do. So the thing is, I think if you all invested time to develop this thing, it's a fairly easy device, and if there's a way that this stuff could be publicized.
Yeah.
Is there any plan for that?
We've been trying to get the word out, and we can work more with our communication staff on trying to
Well, I would
be
suggest,
more aggressive in
I would say if you do like a search, like I have been gathering data, it pops up right away.
yeah, Devin,
It does. And what I wish was that our other jurisdictions did the same thing,
Yeah.
because I have to dig so far into their reports to get the same data.
imitation is the best form of
Well,
flattery, so.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, this is unique because this is not something that very many jurisdictions have. Or certainly, as you said, you gotta dig very, very deep to find this kind of data. So this is
one
extraordinary.
One
And
last
fantastic
highlight,
stuff.
and again, this was feedback that we received from people, was there was no information previously about kind of our financing and funds, and this. So we added a new page to show kind of the historic trend of funding for county loan funds, including investment fund. So this is broken out between the general fund, which is at the bottom, because that's the base that the county board is approving each year. And then recordation fees, and also the Columbia Pike tax increment financing. developer contributions in orange there, loan repayments, a significant source of funds as our fund is mature, and then federal funds and some other things that are very rare. But again, it's a resource for you all.
Thank you.
Joel.
Thank you, Russell. Good evening. I'm Joel Franklin with the Housing Division as well. And so I'm going to go over something new this year, which is a kind of a companion piece to the dashboard that we've created, which is a new web page that we're calling Implementation Highlights. So as you're aware, Arlington County is working hard to achieve the specific goals and objectives outlined in not only the Affordable Housing Master Plan, but the Fair Housing Plan, Housing Arlington, and CAF strategies. So just a little bit of background on each of these efforts. Obviously, Russell mentioned the Affordable Housing Master Plan, which was adopted in 2015, which really defines the county's overall affordable housing policy. And we did review that in 2022, and that produced an updated implementation framework, which a lot of these recommendations stem from that we're going to go over. Likewise, the Fair Housing Plan was adopted just this last July 2023. It's a planning process that local governments take on to look for meaningful actions to overcome historic patterns of segregation, promote fair housing choice, and foster inclusive communities. Housing Arlington was launched in March 2019 by the County Board and aims to build on existing efforts and generate new innovative solutions for a full spectrum of housing affordability. And lastly, released in April 2022, the county published the CAF Strategies Report. This report is to enable more proactive oversight of CAF units and more intentional efforts to support residents living in our committed affordable units. So these are all long-term plans or efforts, and they have different recommendations. A lot of them you're going to see are somewhat overlapping as well, but they all have different kind of timelines associated with them. Some are short-term, immediately our midterm, 2 to 3 years, our long-term, which could be 5 years or longer. So the implementation webpage, we're hoping will be kind of updated as new implementation work goes or happens. So as work progresses in other areas, we will be updating this. So I'm going to walk through some of the current highlights. So the first 3 highlights are about planning initiatives and some analysis done regarding financial tools. These are implementation items highlighted in the master plan, Fair Housing Plan, and Housing Arlington. The financial tools initiative seeks to expand and further leverage county resources for affordable housing. As part of the Housing Arlington initiative, the financial tools webpage was updated. The update provides a comprehensive review of affordable housing finances, challenges, and explores various funding sources. The updated webpage includes a timeline of the county's financial tools milestones as well. On Saturday, November 11th, 2023, the County Board adopted the Langston Boulevard Area Plan, concluding a multi-year process. The Langston Boulevard Area Plan provides a series of policies and implementation strategies to guide future public and private development decisions in a purposeful way. As you can imagine, housing was a big conversation piece with this. It includes projected outcomes of an increase in overall housing supply of up to 26,000 units by 2075, an increase in affordable housing by up to potentially 3,800 units by 2075. In addition, at the adoption, the County Board amended the plan to really reaffirm the goal of realizing 25 affordable housing units by 2040, really aligning with the projections that we have set forth in the Affordable Housing Master Plan. Lastly on this one, I think you've heard a lot so about the new approach to home ownership and the housing study. So I won't go into any detail there, but we highlight that the draft recommendations were released. The next set of items are regarding our committed affordable housing stock, which just touches on implementation items for the master plan, fair housing plan, and CAF strategies. The county's housing division has increased CAF inspection capacity from just 5 to 10% up to 20% of the portfolio annually. We did this by hiring an additional staff person to focus on compliance, communication, and conflict resolution. So in fiscal year 24, the county and its third-party inspections firm completed over 1,900 unit inspections. Of those, about 1,800 passed on the first inspection, which is really good, and 150 units were found to have deficiencies which were repaired within the required time period. Secondly, the demographic information now provided in the Affordable Housing Dashboard provides some insight into the demographic makeup of committed affordable housing. The data was provided by our partners, AHC, APA, Wesley Housing, and represents a portion of the CAF resident population, which is including just over 10,000 residents in about 4,700 households. So there are some gaps there, but this is the first year that we've presented on this demographic data and presents a kind of starting point to continue to collect this information. Lastly here, a survey was conducted by Bugata on behalf of Arlington County with the goal of gathering insights into the experience of residents living in committed affordable units in Arlington. So the primary objective of the survey was to assess participants' resident satisfaction with their living condition, identify challenges the residents face, and explore opportunities for improvements. The data collected will inform future policy decisions to enhance the quality of affordable housing in Arlington. So the next 5 items focus on human service related items. So you may be aware, Arlington County conducted a housing grant study that put forth recommendations on potential changes to the program and their corresponding financial impact. The study garnered feedback from current and past participants, stakeholders, staff, past applicants. The recommendations from the study were bucketed into 4 categories: eligibility criteria, program requirements, staffing, and program operations. Recommendations were presented to the county board during the 25 budget cycle. Likewise, in September 2023, Arlington County reopened its housing choice voucher waiting list for a 10-day period. The county received a whopping more than 19,000 applications worldwide through its online portal. A total of 5,000 applications were selected via randomized lottery to be retained on the program's waitlist. Finally, on the slide, the redevelopment of the group home of 1212 Irving Street was completed and has a capacity for 6 individuals with high medical and behavioral needs. The cost of the operation of the group home is projected to be $800,000. But the good thing there is it's projected to be offset by an estimated $600,000 in Virginia medical assistance services reimbursements. Arlington County also entered into an agreement with the Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services to administer state rental assistance program vouchers. The county's housing choice voucher program was awarded 10 state vouchers to provide adults with developmental disabilities that live in less integrated settings, such as nursing homes or group homes. So these vouchers will continue to be reissued to eligible households upon turnover. And lastly here, the COC, or the Continuum of Care, is constantly looking for new funding opportunities. They were successful in completing a supplemental NOFA, resulting in a 3-year HUD award for some transitional housing and rapid rehousing program. The COC also leveraged Community Solutions Funding, a nonprofit collaborative aimed to end homelessness across communities for a 2-year grant term, really providing staffing support for data analysis and reporting for its Zero for All initiative, a real critical piece to their continuum of care strategy. For the the task of developing tenant landlord information and resources, a packet to easy to understand resources was developed and distributed to more than 9,000 residents of committed affordable units. Package included information on tenant landlord issues, housing resources, and pest management. Additionally, a fair housing campaign was launched in April 2024, and outreach materials on renter rights and responsibilities, and as well as county resources were developed and distributed to 9,000 plus CAF properties. In the fiscal year 24, the Community Development Fund, the county provided funding for a pilot program to make accessible modifications for renters. Rebuilding Together's volunteer home repair program will make critical home repairs for at least 17 low and moderate income homeowners and renter households. So they are working with Aging and Disability Service and the Independent Center of Northern Virginia to identify these low-income tenants who need accessible modifications to be completed in their rental units. The Human Rights Ordinance was amended to include source of funds as a protected class. The source of funds protection prevents discrimination based on a tenant's use of housing choice voucher or other forms of financial assistance. This aligns county policy with the Commonwealth of Virginia's human rights requirements. Lastly, for increased staffing capacity to meet increased needs, DHS created a new position, landlord relations manager, help with rental payment standards, management of landlords and compliance portals. Also, the DHS had a overstrength housing locator position to help residents facing housing eviction or displacement. And here in CPHD, we created a new position in August 2023, Housing Asset Collaboration Manager. This role includes compliance reviews and working with landlords to address complex issues. So that being done, so as noted earlier, we will continue to update this implementation highlights webpage as we have work milestones on other items outlined in the different planning efforts. So we are happy to take any questions or comments you might have.
Thanks. I have two questions. The first one is just if we're Googling this webpage, like what should we Google?
If you Google that, go to the,
Yeah.
on the front page, there's a purple section that says implementation highlights. If you click on that, it'll take you to the web page.
Okay. Thank you. Great.
The dashboard is your key to everything.
Good to know. My other question was, I noticed that there was a mention of the inspections of the CAF units. And I was just wondering, as those inspections are being carried out, if anything that's found in the inspection can be used against the residents. For example, if there's overcrowding, will that be reported and will the residents be at risk of eviction from the results of the inspection?
Jennifer, do you have any insights on that?
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure. I don't believe that they look at that. I don't think the inspections that we conduct are about property conditions. So they don't really track number of people, I believe, but we can get back to you on that.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That'll be good to know.
Sorry, go ahead.
The educational materials, I know there was a slide where it was presented that materials had been created to make it easier, I guess, to understand or like educate people. How many languages is that in?
It was in English and Spanish, and then there was a QR code that would take you to a page that you could use Google Translate.
I would recommend making it just maybe a little easier because I don't know, like using QR codes and then having to go through Google Translate, like that seems like so many steps. And Google Translate isn't always it's always a direct translation, so sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood.
Do you have data on how many fair housing complaints have been submitted to Arlington County this year?
If I can go,
believe that's in the dashboard, Russell.
yeah, hang on. Let me share my screen again.
This is Doris. I
So,
just wondered, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm following on the question.
Yeah, one sec, Doris.
So
Okay.
dashboard landing page, we do have an annual report that is, it's not a text-based thing. It is the dashboard intended to kind of replace this a bit, but there's still a lot of information that we can't all fit in the dashboard. So this is the indicators report. So when the Affordable Housing Master Plan was adopted with its 3 main goals, a slew of objectives, and probably over 50 policies. A companion document was created on reporting and monitoring and identified, I think, 61 or 62 indicators to follow up on and other information points. And so as far as complaints, that's an information item under kind of the fair housing, which is under the access goal. And for 2024, we kind of tracked 3 different complaints. Our Housing Information Center, which receives phone calls from tenants and landlords regarding issues, we got 5 complaints. That's not an official place to like log your complaint, but that we track that. The Office of Human Rights, they received 10 complaints in fiscal year 2024, up from 2023 when it was eight complaints. We also request information from HUD because people can lodge fair housing complaints with HUD. And there were 8 reports in 2024, up from 0 in 2023, and it was 5 in 2022. So that's in this indicators report, which is less friendly than the dashboard, but it has a lot more information.
And I can't actually read anything it says.
No.
Does it break it out by the type of fair housing violation that was alleged?
No, this does not. No, I know in the fair housing plan, I believe in the information that was gathered for that, it had it disaggregated, but we don't have it disaggregated
Okay.
here.
Can we?
If I can jump in, something that we will be able to be reporting on soon is, as you may know, the county has not done fair housing testing for the last several years. Testing meaning going out to different properties to see if different characteristics get rented to or not get rented to. So the county actually now has a vendor, the Equal Rights Center, who has done fair housing testing over the past month. So that will be published at some point in this year. And so we'll also add that to the report.
Great, yeah, would love a briefing on that when that data comes available.
So if people go to other places like the fair house, and then, or they go to like, for fair
Home,
housing,
Virginia,
or they go to home Virginia, are you also tracking that data or no?
we don't have that data.
But if they go to home, that gets logged by HUD.
Okay.
It doesn't?
No.
It really?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So the HUD data is only going to be complaints that are actually filed at HUD. One of the questions I had is actually there's even a gap within that data because some of the complaints of the Virginia Fair Housing Office are not going to be cross-filed at HUD. But HUD is only counting the complaints that they actually docket where they identified like you initially file a complaint, you have to get through intake. Once you get through intake, that's the number you're reporting on. That's not reporting like individuals that contacted the Equal Rights Center. That's not counting individuals that contacted Home of Virginia. It's only folks that have filed a formal complaint at HUD or the Arlington County office.
But if they contact home and it becomes a formal complaint, then it will go through, like, be logged?
Yeah, but for like context, I would say like over 90% of the complaints that the Equal Rights Center sees never end up in a complaint because we're frequently resolving the issue via advocacy. And so that data then is not reflected.
Can we try and collect and consolidate that data? Because it would be super helpful to have a more comprehensive picture of what the fair housing enforcement landscape looks like in Arlington.
I think that's a great idea. We have struggled to get that before for different reasons, but we can, certainly reach out again and try, because I agree that would be helpful to have a fuller picture.
It would also be great to be able to see how many source of income complaints were filed, like how many disability, how many pick your protected characteristic. So we have a better sense of like what are the trends over time in different places. I mean, I hear about complaints too on social media and people just reaching out about things, and most of them I think go unreported officially because people just are very hesitant. And even if you connect them with the ERC or home, they're still like, "Ah, I don't know if I want to make a whole big thing out of it, even though they've been discriminated against, the rights violated." But um, so the materials that the county put together starting in April for fair housing education and sent to CAP residents, can you tell us more about what those were? Were there actual like touch points with the residents, or was that, sending a stack of flyers or information to like the property management firm for each of those properties and having them distribute them? Can you just tell us more about what that education effort looked like?
Sure, and the packet is online, so if I can find it, I will post it. Basically, we worked with Bugada, who's a nonprofit organization who does outreach stuff, and their kids, that was their summer project last summer, is they actually literally went to over 9,000 CAF units and distributed a packet of materials. So it was printed materials. And as Joel mentioned, it was on, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, it was on sort of CAF resources, it was on rights and responsibilities. There was a DHS flyer. Pest management, I think those are the things we focused on. That was sort of the feedback we got from the CAF survey, was sort of information that people wanted. So those were hand distributed to a lot of CAF properties, the ones that we were able to get into. And again, I'll post it in the chat if I can find it.
Do we know how many fair housing complaints have come from CAF properties versus non-CAFs?
No.
No.
That would also be helpful information.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a difference between inquiries and then actual complaints. Because I get a lot of inquiries and then they end up not being anything substance. They have to be educated about what is fair housing violation and what is not.
And in this case, I'm talking about actual complaints like filed with the Office of Human Rights, rather than just like
People like, I've been discriminated against because my landlord will not.
I don't believe the addresses would be public. I'm not sure about that.
Proceeded with individual complaints, but just like we had this many complaints from this property, assuming you have enough, you can.
Sometimes it's also individual, like I get people that are complaining about like they're renting from a condo owner and they think that they have some sort of beef with that person. So it's not like an apartment building that they're renting. I get those complaints and then
They're still covered by fair housing laws.
I'm sorry, yeah, they still are, I know, but they're not like, they're like, anyways, I do send those people off and urge them to file a complaint.
I guess, I mean, my concern is that in general, what I've found over the years is people do not in the slightest understand their fair housing rights. They don't understand what is illegal, what isn't, and they don't understand how to report things. And that leads to a lot of stuff not being reported. And so just, I think a big thrust of the plan was we need to educate people. We need to make it as easy as possible for people to understand, when they've had their rights violated, and then do something about it so that they can either go through conciliation or, sue if they need to.
Yeah, we had a virtual event about 2 weeks ago, kind of specifically focused on service providers. So it was sort of continuum of care folks, housing locators, case managers. I mean, everyone was welcome, but that was really the targeted, and a presentation on fair housing. And there was some we had over 80 people. Yeah, I mean, great feedback, great education, and we certainly heard people need more of that. So we'll continue to find ways to educate people.
Yeah, I do think that like creating partnerships with trusted organizations is going to be crucial in the next years, because those are very sensitive topics to people, and especially with their families. Like your question about overcrowding and all that, we know that we have households like that, right? And so making like Bugada, I know that they're a really well-known organization, but like having those hurdles of the QR codes and the Google Translates and all of that, I think that like there's a possibility for it to backfire and like not really carry out the goal as intended.
Does the dashboard talk about the complaints that have been filed? How many, like what their ultimate status was? Like how many were, decided to not have merit? How many like went through conciliation? How many went to, I mean, I know Arlington, I don't believe has ever sued based on a fair housing violation, which I still don't understand, but do we have that data as part of the, because I think that's also helpful to know, how many of these ultimately were determined by staff to have merit.
Yeah, we don't have that information.
Okay. So that would be awesome human rights. By that, they're not here today. Okay.
Yeah, I would add, as Kellen was talking about with the information being distributed to the CAF residents, I think it would also be great to have that distributed to the market rate affordable residents, because that's a large percentage of people who might be affected.
That's good. And just so the commission's aware, I was texting with our board liaisons earlier, and they have offered up the Office of Human Rights to come to our December meeting since they declined to come to this meeting. So hopefully they'll come and be able to answer questions. Other questions about any of there was a lot packed into that brief. Yeah.
I just have a question about the dashboard. It's tracking new affordable housing, and one of the problems is that when housing loses their subsidies, right? I was wondering if you're tracking like when the subsidies expire and how Arlington County is working to preserve the affordability of those.
There's a page on the dashboard about expirations,
right.
and it lists, it has them by decade, and then actually provides a list of complexes that will expire in the next 10 years. And our development staff works out, reaching out to those owners to see how to extend affordability. So fortunately, DC has a huge amount that are expiring. Ours is, we've got a problem in the decade of 2070, I think, is when we've really got going to be busy. But we've got our eyes on that. But it's important to keep focus. Yeah, thank you.
With the CAF strategies, I know one of the items, and I don't think I saw it as part of the dashboard, but staff had worked on setting up like a resident council at Barcroft. I know that ran into some challenges, I think based off of somewhat different ideas about what it would take to have a sort of long-term resident council at a property like Barcroft. Is besides Barcroft, and I don't know if the resident council is still meeting or if anything is happening with that now, or if that has sort of gone defunct, but is the county planning to do anything similar at other properties to try to get resident councils started, or working with Bagata to do that?
So I can at least speak to the Bugatti piece. I'm not sure if Barcroft is still meeting. Joel or Russell, jump in if you know. I know they had the last few meetings, they didn't have a lot of attendance, so I don't know if they're still trying or not. We can check on that and get back to you. So Bugatti has in their contract to provide technical assistance to resident groups who want to set up a resident council, and they always ask. They hardly ever get takers. But it's certainly something they're open to doing and available to help with if that's something that residents are interested in.
Does that also allow them to compensate people who form a resident council, or it's just technical assistance?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. Is that something the county is considering? Because I know it's one of the best practices is providing compensation for people on resident councils at low-income properties.
The county is moving towards sort of paying people for lived experience in different areas. We have not moved towards that in this area.
Okay. With the Serrano, can you guys provide your assessment on like where things stand? I know they've made HC has made a lot of progress since it sort of the crisis came to a head in 2021. I think it'd be helpful if you guys are able to tonight, I don't know if you're prepared for that, but and that sort of started the whole CAF strategies process. But any update on, where things stand with the Serrano, if you're still hearing any of the similar complaints that came up before or new things, or if in the county's view, things are going, pretty well there.
Unfortunately, we'll have to defer to the asset management team, of whom nobody is here, but again, we can ask. I think they did do inspections of the Serrano this past year, so that probably gave some good indications, but I don't know the details. Joel or Russell, do you? Yeah.
No, I think it is.
Okay. And as far as some of the other items on the fair housing plan, and I know like the plan itself has the sort of implementation schedule. Are there any changes to that schedule, or is like what was approved in the plan still, like if it said, immediate 1 to 6 months or 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, is that all still the same, or have some of those things shifted in either direction?
I think largely we're on track. I mean, I think there was a lot of things that were tied to the CAF NOFA, which hasn't happened. I think that was supposed to be immediate, but we haven't had a NOFA, so I think that's one of the things that has slipped a little. But otherwise, we haven't changed anything. But I think the one thing that will be interesting moving forward is, we were awarded some funding from HUD for the COG piece to kind of track the regional efforts. So we're excited to get together and track that as well. So that needs to get started.
Okay. And with Arlington looking at becoming part of the Fair Housing Assistance Program for HUD, is there any update on the Office of Human Rights pursuing that?
So we have agreed to we as in the housing division have agreed to start doing some research on that and start meeting with counterparts in our area that are substantially equivalent. So kind of the onus is on us to kind of start that process. We have not yet. And then we'll hand that research and information off to the Office of Human Rights.
Okay. Appreciate the proactiveness coming from CPH. Any other questions?
This is Doris.
Oh, go ahead, Doris.
Okay, thanks. First I want to say to
Doris, if you can get closer to your phone.
Okay, I wanted to express my appreciation for the county going into a contract for the statewide rental assistance program for people with ID and DD who are covered by the Olmstead Agreement. And then I also wanted to ask, are we now tracking in the data how many type A units we are adding to the stock and what percentage they are of the CAF units, and maybe even what percentage they are of the entire stock of multifamily units. And then I also wanted to ask, how do you have any thoughts or perspectives about how HUD will be going about making sure that that jurisdictions are going to comply with the requirement for the fair housing, for the new fair housing reporting? And the last question is the data that you're presenting tonight and other data that's on the website and dashboard, does it now meet the new standard for accessibility at the WCAG 2.1 AA, or are you going to be working on getting it there because compliance with that standard will be required for all local and state governments in a year and a half?
Russell, do you want to answer the data questions? Sorry, go ahead.
We do track the number of units produced that are type A accessible. For 2024 was 13 of our 132 CAFs, so about 10%. And we've also been tracking the percent of accessible CAF units that are occupied by persons with disabilities, recognizing that there wasn't always the best match, and more providers have been providing kind of bump out contracts basically for persons who don't need the accessible features in a unit. That allows them the owner of the property to have them move should somebody need the accessible feature in the unit. That's been helpful in bumping up the number of, or the percentage of accessible units that are actually occupied by people who need those features. And then as far as compliance with requirements.
The target was 10%, right? So how far away from the target being 10% of all CAFs?
Yeah, I don't have that number at my fingertips. I have lots of numbers at my fingertips, but that's one that I don't have, but I'll be working with our asset management folks to make sure that we have that. But it was 10% for the last year. There've been years, if one looks at the indicators report, where it's been particularly low. When we acquired the Barcroft apartments, obviously not many of those were accessible at the time. We anticipate as they go through redevelopment that a greater number of those will be accessible. So that's something to keep in mind when looking at the numbers. But we are striving to, have a minimum of 10% of our units as accessible in new projects.
I think there was a
And the
question
question, yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Sorry.
The fair housing
about
plan.
fair housing reporting. I mean, we started this process after the rule got revoked, and we went ahead as if it didn't. So we did, basically followed HUD's, guidance, even though it was no longer required. So we are continuing to operate that way and submit basically to HUD on how we're firmly furthering fair housing.
Yeah, so there was supposed to be a final affirmatively furthering fair housing rule to come out this year that would have sort of codified the requirements for reporting. That has not come out. So presumably at this point, it'll depend on the next administration to decide how they want, if and how they want this rule to be implemented. Kind of what that will set out the requirements.
Oh, yeah, thanks. You've answered my question. And I guess I think it would be important to, at some point, give this presentation to the Disability Commission, so I would request.
Doris, I'm sorry, can't really hear you.
I was just asking if they would, in some future point, do this presentation for the Disability Commission. That's all.
Sure.
Great. Susie, did you have something you want to add?
I was just curious, Joel, you mentioned that you're doing research on Arlington County Office of Human Rights becoming a FAP, or Fair Housing Assistance Program. And I'm wondering, in addition to connecting with other agencies that already have FAP status, if you also connected with like other local areas that are trying to pursue it, because I think there'd be opportunities to maybe not all replicate the same wheel of research and whatnot. And I think Prince George's County and Anne Arundel are both looking to achieve FAP status.
Great. That's great information. A great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to add with that too, that like Fairfax is a FAP, and I believe they're the only other, at this point. I know Charlottesville is trying to become one. My understanding is that they're probably better to look at their ordinance, but not at how they actually do their work, because I've heard not great things about it. Which, not to single them out, I've heard that about just about everyone involved in fair housing enforcement. It's tough to get anyone to give you examples of who's doing this well across the country. But other than our FIPS, like ERC and Home, which I think are doing good work, but just that caveat that they may not, be best to emulate when it comes to how they actually implement things versus what's on paper. But I appreciate that you guys are looking into that. Any other items? Great. Well, thank you so much for this presentation and for the hard work that you all are doing to move forward on the Affordable Housing Master Plan implementation, Fair Housing Plan implementation, and the CAP strategies. As I know it's a lot of work, and appreciate how much time and energy you all putting into making the community safer, more fair, accessible, etc. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Request a break.
Yeah, we can do a 5-minute break.
Usually I can do it. Election night, I can sleep. It's just kicking my butt.
get started. Our next agenda item is the rent stabilization study resolution. And apologies for not sending out the drafts before yesterday, but it was a very busy week and busy week before that. And so again, this sort of stemmed from our conversations in the legislative priority subcommittee over the summer, where we talked about rent stabilization, but said, we don't think it's ready for us to consider as a legislative priority for the county board to bring to Richmond. But I think we did talk about, we thought it'd be worthwhile from a data collection standpoint to recommend that the board do a study on what would be the impacts of rent stabilization if and when the county were able to do it, so that there was at least more information for policymakers to consider whether or not the board should try to advocate for something like this, or whether it's not a good use of their time. And so that was the genesis of this resolution. And before we jump into discussion about it, does anyone have any questions about anything?
Where did this language?
I wrote it.
But did you refer, did you look at other resolutions from other commissions or
I've written other resolutions before for
I was just curious. I'm not sorry that came across
adversarial.
This.
Yeah, that was not my intention.
No,
I'm just curious.
I've drafted resolutions before, so I just kind of use that as a guiding point. And it's supposed to be somewhat logical, with the first whereas, it sort of leads you to the next one, leads you to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to culminate, and so therefore this is what we recommend.
Where did the supporting information come from?
So Jason, I think, had drafted 2 of the documents that were sent out, and then I had also sent out the National Housing Coalition
Urban Institute
case studies, and then the Urban Institute's study on rent stabilization, which, we can talk about the merits of rent stabilization. I don't think it's necessary for this, because we're just asking for a study. We're not asking.
We already did.
But but I think the main question before us is, do we think this is a good use of the county's time and money to get this data? And that, to me, is the question of, do we move forward with this? Because we do think that this is a priority for them to gather this information and then take a position, or not take a position based on what they find, or we don't think it's a priority.
I think the whereas statements do a really good job of kind of, to your point, driving towards the reason why we should do it. And if you look at the 3rd and 4th whereas, if we're just talking about affordability and stability within Arlington, we've got a significant amount of the residents in the county which are renters, over half of them, and over a third of them pay more than 30% of their annual income in rent alone. I feel like that's kind of on its face a reason why to move forward with it, at least to know what the scale and scope would be.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the subcommittee, but I make no secret that I think rent stabilization is a good policy, depending on how it is implemented. And I think that's a big caveat, because I think there's ways to do it where it's not a good policy, and there's ways to do it where it can be very effective at increasing the stability of people in housing at all income levels, which I think is a good thing. And it's also something that I think I may have brought up before. Whenever I talk to renters in Arlington about what is the number one issue that you're facing, it's always the high increase of rent, and it makes it harder for me to continue living in Arlington. And I know there's 2 different terms that I use here. I talked about anti-rent gouging, and I also talk about rent stabilization. They could be kind of synonymous, but there's also anti-rent gouging. You could also sort of interpret more as a higher end cap, versus you see some rent stabilization that may say we're gonna peg it to the CPI index increase. Whereas an anti-rent gouging may say no more than like a 10% increase per year or something relatively high, meant to say, you shouldn't be doing 20% increases, but, we're also not trying to limit it, just to like 2% a year or something that could be quite low. So that's why I use the two different terms, because I feel like there's a slightly different focus with them potentially, and different areas have adopted different versions of it. So the rent stabilization, I mean, you could use rent stabilization to also encompass anti-rent gouging. But I do think anti-rent gouging is a little bit, it means something slightly different than rent stabilization.
Yeah, I think that's good just for the study, for the purpose of the study. You kind of have like a range of different possibilities to pursue. You could go to a softer approach, right? You say, okay, 10% is your limit, but that gives you a bit of flexibility to work with. You could say whatever CPI is plus 3% that's done in some place like Colorado, or you could say a flat, or you could just say, well, whatever CPI is, or 7%, but the lower of those amounts. So there's a lot of flexibility that the county can have when they're doing the study.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Tom was saying, that I personally think rent stabilization is important. Talking with some folks, or with Saul from Bugada, said that was one of the primary concerns that residents have, is they need rent stabilization. And that being said, like in terms of the study, I think it would be really helpful to, whether people are for or against it, just to have that understanding of what is it like in Montgomery County, because that's different from all the other places that have been studied. I guess my question is, like, politically speaking, like, if this study shows that it is a good thing and it should be passed, what would that look like to pass that at the state level? Would we be waiting for potentially a different governor, potentially different makeup of the General Assembly?
I mean, ultimately, that's up to the county board if they choose to do anything with the results of the study. If they would agree to do the study in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, I think under the current governor, this wouldn't pass, and I think even under the current makeup of the General Assembly, this probably wouldn't pass, even with Democratic control of both the Senate and the House. So, do I think any potential, rent stabilization happening in Virginia is in the future? Yes. I don't think this is an immediate term thing. But I do think that it's important to at least have some information and data on, instead of just looking at, okay, in Portland, Oregon, this is how it worked, or in, even Montgomery County, but knowing what the different economic factors that influence, are present in Arlington County, having a third party come in and say, here's what we think the impact would be here on this locality and the people that lived here and the, businesses and workers. So that as there's a discussion and debate around, is this something we should do? It's a more informed discussion, instead of sort of cherry picking. The people who are for it say, well, it worked really well in all these places. The people against it say, well, it was terrible in all these other places. That they say, well, according to the data in Arlington, it looks like this is the likely impact. Let's debate based on the same facts that we have. That's my thinking on this, and why I think it's important. Yeah.
That's the question. The cost to a study.
Who would be doing it?
So that would be up to the county board to determine. Again, if they were to move forward with it. I mean, it's difficult to say. When I was talking to staff about something like this, they said like no more than 100K. But within that, I don't know if this is 50,000, 70,000. Like, yeah. So.
Yeah, it's someone who was raised to be kind of against this issue. I think we should do it. Primarily because what we've experienced with a whole bunch of housing issues, I believe transparency is the best form of whatever, and this would be something good to have, even if it's not done. And I'm just looking, looking at our county where 70% of our area is single family and 30% isn't, and where are people going to live? So, you know, the more you force information in the public domain, I think it's great. I work, I communicate with Jason. I have one little amendment to this, if I could propose it, even though I don't know what the rules of order are, but okay. 1, 2, 7, 10. On the 10th, whereas the last line, delete residents and insert renters, comma, property owners and workers of Arlington County. Just adding in property owners there to be fair and doing the research.
So it would be renters.
Renters, comma, property owners and workers. Here it is.
Okay, yeah, I have no issue with that. Any, okay. And I did, Jason, I know, you know, you had a lot of thoughts about this, during the legislative priority subcommittee meetings. And obviously you shared your analysis of rent stabilization, you know, with the Housing Commission. And, I don't think you had your hand up, but I wanted to at least call on you if you wanted to share your thoughts. I know you'd send me an email as well that I have not had a chance to respond to, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I think that this actually draft is, I think, very fair in terms of presenting a pretty neutral aspect on this. You know, obviously I'm, you know, not in favor of implementing the policy. However, you know, I think a study, you know, as long as it's fairly shows the pros and cons, could be good. I think that, you know, given the current federal situation and, you know, like it's one thing to issue a study if we know that a state legislation is going to pass very soon or it's like ready to go. But I think it's a very prospective thing because obviously in the current makeup of the legislature and governor, it's not this wouldn't pass. You know, California just had a big proposition that a local enabling legislation that failed about 60-40, but it was, you know, but I think that, you know, if the commission is willing to put this forward to a vote, I think that, you know, I would go with the commission. I just have one, I think, additional thing out if we could put in the assessment is make sure to look at the impact, specifically call out how this if anything was implemented, how it would affect the 3 goals in the Affordable Housing Master Plan. You know, because I think that's just important that, you know, it ties back into our current policy. So maybe if that's like a number 4 thing or adding AHMP there, maybe into number 2, availability of housing as per the 3 goals of the AHMP.
So number 3 is the affordability of housing in Arlington County. Do we just want to, as part of that, just expand it to say, and 3, the affordability of housing in Arlington County and the 3 main goals of the Affordable Housing Master Plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Want to outline what those are? I'm not sure what they are.
It's in the report.
The
beginning of the report have.
Joe, do you want to read them out loud?
Yeah, okay. 1, having an adequate supply of housing for the community's needs. 2, ensuring that all segments of the community have access to housing. 3, ensuring that housing efforts contribute to a sustainable community.
Okay. Any other recommended edits for this?
No edits. I just want to say that I think this is great. I do sort of wonder though, like if the county board agrees to
do the study soon, kind of to Jason's point, like when the data becomes stale, like is it the right time basically to recommend this? If we don't think that. What's that?
Well, it's gonna take a while to get this going,
yeah.
and we have an election in
Yeah.
2025 for the governor, so.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it was just a question.
You know,
That's a good one. Be an ongoing process. It's gonna take years.
it's gonna take years. This is not gonna.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I think you wouldn't have the results till 2026. So.
and I think
If not.
If the county board passes.
Yeah, if they do it
Well, I
today.
think that would be the earliest, so
Yeah.
why, I'm not too worried about the timing of, and what kind of governor we have presently.
And I think what's likely to is, let's say that we adopt this recommendation, then when it comes to budget season in March, we would have to then bring it up again and say, okay, now that you're considering funding, remember we passed this resolution, we want you to actually fund that. And it may or may not get included in the next budget, so then it, you know, it'd be, yeah.
Okay.
You know, we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, this, it's out there, and they just have to look at our data. Right? So and after this is done, I have a recommendation. I'm a voluntary advisor to a company called Rental Matrix Solutions, where they have a contract with the state of Connecticut where they're already doing this. And I was going to, at the next meeting, he could give a 10-minute Zoom overview of what he's doing, et cetera. More so, even for the county staff, the county may want to look at this company, but this stuff can be done. It can be done fairly quickly. So.
Appreciate that, Joe. And we can see, I don't know necessarily about December. We got to look at what else has to be on the agenda, but I also am trying to meet, I have a meeting, but it's getting pushed again with you weren't on the Eagle chain, I don't think. For Montgomery County, the person who's in charge of the rent stabilization program, and I think is also basically the Ann Benicia of Montgomery County, to just talk about their experience with this and kind of gather more information. And it would be great at some point if we could get them or Prince George's County to come and present to the whole commission. But I'm hoping establishing a relationship, having, you know, individual meeting first, that we can get to that point. At some point, you know, probably not December, but maybe next year. Is I don't think so. I can send you after. It may take me a minute to find it in my email. Yeah. Any other discussion on this item? Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution as amended?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. I vote yes. Commissioner Surface?
Yes.
Commissioner Wenger?
Yes.
Commissioner Lennick?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Danny
Oh,
still
he's
online?
Danny's-
Oh,
He just flickered for a second.
Oh, they did.
Or-
Yes.
oh, okay, thank you. That was a yes,
Sorry.
you said?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Montgomery?
Yes.
Commissioner Ventrone?
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar?
Yes.
Commissioner Blake?
Yes.
And Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
And that was everyone, right? Okay, it passed. Okay. And that was not our, okay, we have development updates.
Yes. So one update, it is another Barcroft renovation update. Like the 4th out of 12. So this is for the 3rd renovation use permit, which you heard a few months ago. Basically, it's for an amendment to that permit. And none of the unit count is changing. Basically, they found extra maintenance and closet space that they were able to take a bunch of the 2-bedroom units, shift them to 3-bedroom units. So that's really the only change that's being made here is the unit composition is changing to be more 3-bedroom units than it was originally imagined. And then additionally, we've also added language into the conditions so that if we have to adjust the unit composition in a way where there's more family size units in the future, we don't have to go back to the county board every. So that is the update on Barcroft. So that will be going for the November meeting. It'll be on the consent agenda, I assume. So yeah, just more 3-bedroom units than were originally imagined in third renovation phase. And that is the only update I have. I do have the meetings list. If we want to take a quick look at that. So looks like the only one we don't have right now is Norwood and River House. Okay. And then River House is the other one that site plan right now that is pretty active and will be one of the next ones that we hear. So if anyone's interested in that one, let me know. There already was one SPRC on it, but I believe there's a second one coming up. Either November or early December. So yeah, I'll keep sending out opportunities as they come. Just let me know if you are interested. The only other one I have is Public Facilities Review Committee. They don't meet very often, but that was Haley. Not on the commission anymore. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know.
What's the tie-in housing for that?
So the idea is kind of a possible co-location of affordable housing, public facilities. And that's kind of the lens that the housing commissioner rep would use. But it is not a housing focused committee. It is looking at the uses of all the county's land and properties.
But for that, the person doesn't necessarily have to go to every meeting. They can just go to the ones where they're talking about a housing related thing.
Definitely. And then I think they might only meet 4 times a year. I think it's like a quarterly one. So
it's like a good opportunity for someone to sign up.
Yeah, depending on the dates, that's always the important thing for me, but I'm happy to throw my name in the ring.
Okay. I'll connect with the staff liaison committee again and get those dates and can send that to the group as well. But that is everything development updates wise for this.
And Kellen, I'm happy to do this via email if that's better. The 6045 Wilson Boulevard Special Glove study, that was a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. Provide an update.
Super quickly, this is a proposed commercial to residential conversion on Wilson. Built in the 80s, no plans for future use. The developer wants to convert to 16 units. The staff recommended a plan that compromised some of the different. Tree canopy was one of the big ones. Design of building setbacks. Staff proposed a 12 unit. I said we didn't take an official position, but my suspicion based on the commission's previous positions was that we'd probably lean towards the higher density approach. And I'm happy to provide additional detail if anyone wants to reach out to me later.
Yeah, well, sorry, what were the options that were presented like 12? Would that be like a stack? Like, would that be a townhouses? I think one of the options was townhouses. Can you just provide the quick like ABC
There are
options?
too many options for me to give you detail, but there were 4 options, I believe. 1 was multifamily, 2 were townhouse. The 4th one was a mix between multifamily and townhouse. And they all ranged between like 10 and 16 units.
Nice.
It's way out on the west side of Wilson Boulevard.
Okay, yeah, I'm just realizing. densely?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be towards the, what, Eden Center or BJ?
Yeah, it's not close to a metro stop.
Yes. I don't think we have any updates on, actually, for Clarendon Presbyterian, there is no glove study anymore, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct. I can delete that one.
It's gonna eventually be just a site plan, but yeah, okay.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. Homeownership subcommittee, is it done?
Comments are welcome.
Comments on whether the
On
subcommittee should continue?
comments on anything.
Okay.
By December 6th, right?
Yeah,
By Friday, December 6th. So if you have any comments,
And the proposal that maybe.
correct. So I would say that would probably be the best thing if you have any feelings about it.
but as far as the subcommittee itself, is that going to exist in 2025? Okay, who makes that decision? I feel like we do, but I also feel like staff is kind of driving it.
Continue the subcommittee,
Yeah,
even if we don't have meetings.
well, in December, Alex, I do want to do the review of our plan of, not plan of action, but our, work plan for the year, and then have a discussion on what people think should be priorities for next
We
year.
don't have to kill it. We can keep it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if people want to continue it and it adds value.
Well, because every once in a while, things do pop up.
Okay, SIDSAC.
We finished, all of the proposal, CDBG, et cetera, proposal reviews. And the December meeting, the dot night, which is where all the scores and everybody gets sort of stacked for it to go to then staff, and staff does the budget decisions. But also in the December, it was supposed to be at the November meeting, but the county is putting forth what's called a 108 loan, which is where they borrow against their CDBG, our CDBG money for economic development activity. And it's going to be used at the Goodwill site that we approved. So that's there. We were going to be reviewing the 108 application that has to go to HUD to be reviewed. However, apparently there was some concern, I think, perhaps after Tuesday, about the amount of debt, because it is the county taking on debt, and that concern. So they're reevaluating the 108 application, and so we won't get it until December. So I think they're still doing a 108 loan, but it may be a less bust one or something. We're not quite sure, but it got tabled until December.
Okay.
So once I get more of the details, I'll bring to the next meeting the information about that 108. But I think it's the county's first in a while 108 transaction. So that's kind of exciting, a little scary, but kind of exciting. So to do, and it's enhancement for the Goodwill project, which I think is pretty cool. So
Sounds good. Want to do another plug for the historic affairs? Something that stands, it's an L, and then there we go. So I feel like I'm hearing in the community increased concern that historic preservation is going to increasingly, especially with Patrick Hope's bill passing earlier this year, used as a tool to stop any development like throughout the county, especially affordable, housing where people don't like the density, because it is now much easier for anyone to just be like, I challenge this, it's historic. You can't make any changes here. I don't know if people saw the Air Force Association building.
Yeah.
And people were like, it's historic because the Air Force Association was here. And that requires Yes.
It's really intense.
Yeah.
You can just start throwing around frivolously.
And that required, it triggered a whole process that go through. Is it historic? We have to consider that before. So it's something that I think people who don't want redevelopment especially are going to increasingly use to just slow down and increase the cost of these projects. And so my concern is, I don't know how much the Historic Affairs Landmark Review Board is thinking about our affordable housing goals and our need for housing supply. And I am planning to schedule a meeting with the chair soon to share some of, sentiments from our meetings. But I do think it would add value to have a liaison who, when they are considering housing related historic affairs, like items, to be there to voice like, hey, building more housing is really important. And this used car dealership maybe not have the same value to the community of preserving it as like actual housing that people.
I volunteered for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Okay, we will let them know and get you on that list. Community Services Board, anyone interested in that?
The only thing I will say is that there's a community service board rep on SIDSAC, and so we get a lot of info of what's happening on the community service board through SIDSAC. So
you're sort of de facto, you can be both. Is anything
Sort
coming
of.
from them that's relevant, you can bring to us?
sort of.
Okay. I'm okay with that for now, unless someone else wants to attend more meetings. C2E2.
I don't know, did you?
I have not heard of, I haven't gotten anything from them.
Okay, yeah, so they, they're still taking feedback on the green building and incentive policy proposal. I think it closes on November 15th. I would need to check. So and then we were, I think, gonna have a presentation here about that proposal next month.
Yep, they've confirmed.
Okay.
Team.
Thank you for arranging that. Yeah. So, and I think they were thinking of trying to vote on it, like, not that long from now, like in the next few months. So, if anyone wants to go online and fill out the feedback form, because I know we won't have the chance. I don't know if it's not like an action item, right? It's just an information item next one.
I think it's only an action if we're writing a letter to the board or something.
Yeah. Would anyone be interested in considering a letter to the board on that policy of like how the affordable housing aspect intersects with the standards, the building standards?
So we can always have it as an information item and then choose to write a letter regardless. So I don't know, because I feel like I don't know enough about it to say like, yes, we definitely want to send a letter on this. I would probably propose keeping it as an info item, and then if people feel strongly like, yes, we should write a letter, then we just do that. Unless people feel like we should make it an action item, and we're gonna write a letter either way.
I think the info and then the follow-up would be good.
Oh, good.
Like having the info and then deciding whether we want that letter.
Cool. I think it might be helpful to have that because there's this sense of perceived competition between green building, like, things that the new buildings will give you versus affordable housing. It seems like competition, and the idea is to try to get rid of that competition and say that we need both. But I'm open to you guys and your opinions at the next meeting.
Good. And that is it. Well, thank you all very much. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Wait, can I
Oh,
say
yep.
something? So I went to my first county board meeting as like the rep, and like they passed the ordinance that the resident zoning ordinance. That was really cool.
Sorry. The recovery residence.
Recovery,
Yep.
recovery residences.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, who's the rep for this month? Because this month will be the legislative priorities.
When is it? I haven't gone.
The
so-
16th.
Not this.
On the calendar sometime.
I can do it if no one else.
Well, someone should be signed up for it, but.
Unfortunately, two people that are no longer here, Haley and Michael,
Okay,
were the primary.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
yeah, if you wanna do it then, great, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie.
Nikki, is there like an alternate? Because I know Nikki, you said you were.
Yeah, I haven't have you done one already? I haven't done one.
If you want to take my December slot, you're welcome to.
When is the
December,
Only do it through just.
I mean, I'm happy to do it. I put it in my calendar at the beginning of the year. But if you have a burning desire to,
No, I know we're supposed to try to go.
Get a Christmas party.
Or you-
That's
it's not gonna, it shouldn't,
it won't conflict.
I can just be your alternate.
I think
Okay.
unless you're starting Christmas spoiler.
You're right.
Sorry, that was it. I totally stopped us from
No, that's great. That's great.
ending the meeting.
Well, and Nikki, did you want to take December?
you can be first and I can be second. I have it reserved on my calendar,
When is it again?
December 14th. It's usually like,
Yeah, I think that should be okay.
are you an early morning person?
9
I've gone to them before. Yeah, that should be fine.
So
I just thought since I was like the legislative priority subcommittee like person.
Doing that one, yeah.
That's true.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I have no
I'll keep it in
preference.
case something comes up. Like, you can't do it for whatever reason.
Okay, that sounds good.
Let's not both try, because that's what happened last time. I was the alternate and I got on before she got on, so I ended up doing it.
So this
So
will
actually, it was virtual
say priorities and then
last year.
with our resolution also, like.
Took her down on it because it's on the agenda, important agenda.
We could just do.
All right.
Like regular public comment.
Could do regular public comment.
Yeah.
You do, just in case, right?
But
I did, because I was like.
That's fine. Yeah,
Here's
that's
a
fine.
potential
Yeah.
compromise for, this Saturday's meeting. So,
I can't go this.
or sorry, like the
Oh,
November
okay.
meeting. If you want to do legislative priorities and if you want to do the rent stabilization study resolution, because that one will be regular public comment on items not on the agenda, and then the legislative priorities would be like that action item.
She's going anyway, so I think like if she's going, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, they're two separate like speaking times and yeah, so, okay,
Okay, cool. Thanks though. Okay.
just. Yeah, trying to give a compromise so that, you know, speak on the stuff they want to speak on, but it's okay. Cool. Well, thank you all. Yeah, like I said, have a great Thanksgiving and
Thank you.
we'll see you virtually.
Man, I know. Scary. It's not enough.
you.
Enough time. It really is.